Hello and welcome back to the Holistically Awakened Podcast, your one-stop destination for all things health and a kick-ass life. I'm Laurence, a certified nutritional practitioner and health coach, and your host of the Holistically Awakened Podcast. This is your show to learn from me and inspiring experts on how to up-level in all aspects of your life, including health, wealth, relationships, spirituality, and business, so you can live your very best life as your highest potential. No BS policy. This podcast is about awakening to the truth and talking about what really needs to happen to make your life what you want it to be, whatever that may look like. Today, we're having a little PCOS chat with myself and Dr. Dylan Cutler. We are both PCOS fighters and help women overcome their PCOS symptoms naturally. We also created a private Facebook community for women to come together and share their wins and struggles and learn from each other in a safe space. If you'd like to know more and join us, please check out the link in the show notes. So today we're going to be talking about some of the lessons we have learned from our PCOS journey so far so that you don't have to go through the same struggles and so that you can learn from us.
Please note this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice. Please consult with your medical provider or practitioner for your own needs and to assess what is best for you.
So I thought today we could share some of our lessons that we learned specifically in terms of healing our PCOS. What would we do if we went back, or, what are the things that we really wish we knew at the beginning? Because I know a lot of women in here are first starting their journey. They've just been diagnosed. They think they have the PCOS and they're not really sure where to start, right? So if you wanted to start with maybe one thing that you wish you knew or something that really you learned through your journey.
Yeah, there's a lot. My journey has been long because I was diagnosed when I was 16 and now I'm 30. So it's kind of wild that I've been living with PCOS for 14 years now, or of course before, but knowing that I had PCOS for 14 years. So it's been a journey of like a lot of ups and downs. But I think one of the biggest things, I wish I knew that I didn't have to diet for the rest of my life, and that I didn't have to restrict, and I didn't have to destroy my enjoyment of food, which is what happened. I thought I couldn't go out to eat anymore. I couldn't really eat what my friends were eating. I was going to be uncool, like all these thoughts that we have, especially when we're younger. But it still happens, like in my 30s, we're going to a restaurant. Like, of course, I want to be able to eat something on the menu and not be the one person not eating. So I wish I knew that earlier, that like you can be more flexible, you can be more intuitive, and you can totally enjoy food. It's just going to take a little bit of education and a little bit of getting to know your body and what works and what doesn't.
100%. That's actually the first one that I wrote as well. You don't need a diet for PCOS, because I started with the diets and severely restricting different food groups and food items. I was reacting to everything. And I think there is something to be said in terms of therapeutic diets are needed sometimes, but it's usually for a short window. So for instance, me, I had to take out a lot of foods because I was reacting to them because my gut was out of whack. But then I healed the gut and now I'm a lot better. So I think there's also a misconception that we need to find the PCOS diet. Like, what is the PCOS diet? But we have to remember that we all have different types of PCOS and severities and phenotypes, and we're also different individuals. Because even if you have PCOS, we need to look at, who are you as an individual and what do you need? What is right in this moment? Because it could change now and it could change in 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, etc. Right? So we always have to remember that it's going to be really individual to you and that you don't need to fit into a diet. I think this really screwed me up. Instead of finding foods that work for you and just making it like a lifestyle, right? So that was really important for me. And that really is important for PCOS women because there is more of a risk of disordered eating disorders in PCOS women. So again, we need to stop looking at the labels and focus more on the whole body.
Totally. I think we both went there to the disordered eating route, and I doubt it would have been as severe for me if I wasn't given such like harmful and wrong information about PCOS. I don't think I would have like stressed my body out so much to change it a certain way. if doctors weren't telling me, so you have to lose weight to control your symptoms. You have to, like, you're going to have to do this your whole life. Like, you're going to have to, like, always be stepping on the scale every week, like, to make sure you don't get diabetes. Like, all these things, I was just like, now I can't imagine stepping on the scale, and you don't have to do that if you don't want to get diabetes. Like, that's not, I was just
Mm,
given a lot
yeah.
of information
Don't eat
that
carbs.
made me,
It's, yeah.
yeah, and made me like, oh, like, now I can't eat bread, and like, I love bread, and that's sad. That's not how we should live.
Yeah. Life is meant to be lived in a way that is joyful, right? So, and
Mhm.
it's funny because now I'm probably the least restrictive I've ever been, but I've also never had such clear skin or regular cycles or long hair and all of these sorts of things that I really struggled with, are good digestion. It's because it's also obviously like a mindset thing and emotional, but also because I've done the work. And I think that when we are so stressed about food, we're also creating more damage because we're raising stress hormones, blood sugar. So it's almost like they say this a lot. If you're eating a salad by yourself and you're depressed and you're lonely, that's almost worse than if you actually went to go eat the not so healthy food, but in a loving environment and all of that type of thing, right? So it does really play a big part. And Anita, I see, is agreeing. So she was saying that she felt like her doctor was encouraging cutting out all of these foods, basically everything, only allowing steamed food. So yeah, I totally understand that as well. And it just becomes so restrictive. And then you're kind of like, well, what can I do? And especially when we're focusing on what you have to eliminate. So it's like, okay, great, this sucks. Whereas why don't we focus on what you can include? What can we do? It's
Exactly.
more of like the positive, right?
Yeah, that's a big thing, because most common questions I get is like, can I eat this? Can I, like, do I have to remove this? Do I have to, like, avoid this? And it's like, it's not where the focus should be. Like, yes, there's some things I don't consume dairy or meat for reasons, but I don't focus on that. I focus on what I do eat. Um,
Mm.
yeah, so it's a mind shift too. It might seem like a little thing, but in our heads now, we're in an abundant state, and we can have more of it, and you can have as many fruits and vegetables as you want, which is, you know, there's endless supply, and they're all micronutrients and vitamins and minerals and all these things that make our skin healthy and glow, and all those reasons. And you brought up something that was like how you said you're at your healthiest now, and you're not restricting anything. And I feel similarly, like, definitely if I look back to the time when I was calorie counting, I was working out like way too many hours in a day, every day. So over exercising. I had no stress management routine, or like, I didn't have any idea what that kind of stuff was. I thought like taking care of myself was working out and eating well. I didn't know there was a whole like mind body connection. And I struggled. I was probably like 30 pounds heavier. And not that doesn't necessarily mean that I was unhealthy, but I was. My hormones were like off the charts, as far as like blood sugar and testosterone, and I wasn't getting a cycle. I didn't have a cycle till I was 27. And when did finally get a cycle, I wasn't restricting. I was eating whatever I wanted to, and I wasn't working out like hours on the treadmill. I actually started yoga. I actually started like cutting people out of my life that were not good for me, like things like that we don't think about as much.
Yeah, and it's the energy component. That's also where I hit a wall because I was doing all the nutrition and all the exercise. But then I was like, why do I still feel like shit? Why do I not? Why do I still have all these symptoms? And it wasn't until I really started to do the inner healing and the emotional work and all the stress management that it was like a game changer, because that
Mm-hmm.
is really the big work that we don't talk about and makes such a big
Yeah.
difference. And I think also a point that you brought up when it comes to, eat less, exercise more, like the common thing. We're also looking at studies that are mostly done on men. So, for instance, caloric restriction, intermittent fasting, fasting for longer periods of time, very intense workouts, things like that. We have to remember that most of the studies are done on men, and they're not taking into account hormonal fluctuations, the women's cycle, all of that. And we are totally different. We change on a week to week basis throughout the cycle. So we can't just keep doing the same thing. We can't do the same thing as men. You'll see the classic example. A couple will be doing the exact same nutrition plan, the same workout plan, the woman doesn't really get a lot of results and the man is like ripped, and you're like, how is this possible? But it's because of hormones, right? Like we are different. So we have to remember that as well. And I see this as well with my clients. If they're actually eating more, but it's more whole foods, because it actually is less caloric dense, but it's more nutritional dense, right? So you can actually fill up your stomach with more food, which is kind of like, I don't even calorie count. I'm like, I can pretty much eat as much as I want, but I'm not going to overeat because it's so filling. And we also see things like, I'm exercising less. I'm doing like maybe 30-minute workouts. I'm doing some yoga, Pilates, but I'm feeling stronger, better. You know, some women are seeing weight loss results and all that kind of thing. So it's not like you don't have to push harder. We actually need to do less, most of us, and it's just the
Oh,
stress response that's totally always activated, right?
totally. Yeah, and
Anita?
not being in restriction is going to prevent binge eating, which is really common in PCOS.
Mm,
And it makes sense because we binge when we're in a restrictive state. Like our body
yep.
is just like, I can't do this anymore. Like I've been, like, you know, the kind of talk, I've been so good today. I've been, you know, I had this, I didn't have this. And then like 9, 10 o'clock comes around and there's like a box of cookies and I've totally like eaten the entire box. And then when I was younger, I would like hide it
Mm,
because I'm ashamed of that. And it was so terrible. Like I was so mean to myself because of course, I like needed, I'm not saying I needed a box of cookies, but I needed like more food. And I needed, whether it was for my emotional state or my physical state, because I was under eating, like I needed all that, all those calories. And then I would beat myself up because I was bad and I just like ruined my whole day. And now tomorrow I'm gonna start all over again
yep.
and the same thing will happen.
I had the exact same thing. And it's, even if you are eating enough, but you have a restriction around like, I can't have this, I can't have that, and you're only focused on that. As you mentioned before, in the brain, it's actually, there's a great book on this, Brain Over Binge, I believe, where it's
Mm,
saying that it's basically a primal reaction. If you're restricting, you're going to want to overeat. And that's from like, thousands of years ago. But now we don't need, it's just a mechanism that gets activated when we're restricting. So this is why diets don't work. And this is why we always are,
yeah.
we're restricting and then we're binging or whatever, and we're just falling off the wagon. So 100% agree with that. And the other thing I wanted to kind of bring up is, for me, it was interesting. When I first kind of knew that I had PCOS, I stopped hormonal birth control and then I just went down the natural route. But I was looking for quick fixes, even though they were natural, they were still quick fixes. So I was like Googling, how do I get rid of my acne? How do I this or that? And then I would see a supplement or somebody talk about something and I'd be like, oh, this is the answer. This is going to fix it. And that
Yeah.
just went on for years and years and years. And even though there might have been some tiny improvements, it was never, significant, until I realized, oh, you actually have to look at the whole picture and what's going on for you, instead of looking at like, zinc heals acne or this herb will get your period back. Like obviously these things can help, but if you're not actually looking at, are you dealing with insulin resistance, or is your gut inflamed, or do you have infections, and all of these types of things like environmental toxins, adrenal stress, like all of these things need to be addressed on a deeper level. And that's where, for me, getting over the quick fix mentality was just such a big relief, because not only was I wasting time, money, it was super frustrating because I was like, okay, now I got to find another thing. This is where like the real healing actually happened.
Totally. Yeah, and I find the money piece there is huge. Like I've spent so like hundreds of dollars on supplements, just throwing them at myself because they were advertised to work. And it's like it's a industry. They're trying to make money. They're trying to sell us something. So obviously they're gonna like cite the one study that showed that it was effective for like these people, but not necessarily it's gonna be effective for me or you or my clients. And so to swap that for actually like investing in something that's going to be tailored to you and not like, just throwing everything you see on the internet, which is so common. Sorry, my cat is being up to no good. She's okay. Here we go.
Aw, she's there.
Work from home life. She was gonna lick the salt lamp, and I've heard that's really bad. So
Oh yeah, no, let's not do that. Yeah, and then there was one question that came up on the live video that I just want to address about spironolactone. But in general, we're seeing like birth control pill, metformin being kind of like the two main treatments. Obviously, I'm not saying like nobody take this or like this is bad, but like it's still a band-aid fix, right? We're not looking at the underlying imbalances. And
Yeah,
it's even been shown that diet and lifestyle changes have been shown to outperform metformin. There's actually studies. So it's just taking into account, again, are we actually addressing your nutrition and lifestyle first? And then obviously we can look at, supplements on top of that. Spironolactone I never took, but it's used for, as an anti-androgen drug. But there are different contraindications. Has been shown to take up to 6 months to see an effect. So that's kind of annoying if you're really trying to see effects quickly.
yeah,
There are other things too, like disrupting the adrenal glands, ovulation, estrogen, metabolism. There's some risks and side effects. So obviously not great. That's always going to happen with pharmaceuticals. So for me, I really would want to look at, where are your androgens coming from? Why are you making high androgens? Is it insulin resistance? Is it more adrenal stress based, like inflammation, all of that kind of thing? Because even if we find something that lowers androgens, whether it be spironolactone or nettle or saw palmetto, this can all be great in terms of managing it. But then you want to look deeper and see for the long term, where is this coming from so that you're not dependent on it forever, right? That's just my
totally.
take.
Yeah. Yeah. I took spironolactone, I think in my would been like early mid 20s. It was like I thought it was like the one thing I had to do to get rid of to lower my androgens, because that was um, my biggest piece of, like, at that point I didn't have insulin resistance anymore. It was mostly just high androgen levels, and it never worked for me. For one, there was also really high, like really dangerous stuff that can happen, like birth defects. So you absolutely like
Mm.
can not get pregnant if you're on it. So that is, if that is like, I just look at these side effects and like, if that is a risk, I just don't think it's a safe thing to be on, regardless of if you're trying to get pregnant or not. Um, I don't, I like, yeah, I just say my number one thing that we're taught in medical school is do no harm. And yet I find so many doctors and pharmaceuticals are doing harm. So it's kind of ironic, but um, yeah, I think that we can go other routes before spironolactone. Like you said, there's a whole, like, you had a post, I think yesterday, about like, have you tried everything? Like, I've tried
Mm.
everything. Like,
Yeah.
I just, yeah, there, I've totally been there, and I hadn't tried everything. I hadn't tried like the right stuff for me.
Mm. And like for me, even I think both of us could say like I've tried everything because we've tried so many things. But
Mm-hmm.
even now, like objectively, I haven't tried everything. Like I've tried so many things, but I'm still not done my healing journey. There's still things that I need to address. So even I can say I'm not done everything. And
Right.
it's more about maybe have you tried all the quick fixes or the things that are kind of like in the mainstream media, but not really digging deeper, right? Because if you're not feeling good, you're still having symptoms, we need to dig deeper. There's still something missing here. So really
Yeah.
important to work with someone who can help you dig through that.
Yeah. My thing, like, I just drinking water. Like, my thing has been, I haven't been drinking enough water. And it's like literally the simplest. When I was 16, 17 was when I first learned about drinking water. And I was like on my game. And for some reason right now, it's just not happening.
I'm
So
the same.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
and
we
it's
all have
like
our,
yeah, and it's like, what supplement could I take? But then it's like, well, are you actually sleeping? Are you drinking water? Are you, all these types of things? Because obviously, again, these things may be boring or it's like, oh, well, that's probably not going to make a big difference, but it will, right? It's like the little things we
Mhm.
forget about. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, like our bodies are water so much. I find like if I get acne on my forehead, it's usually because I haven't been drinking enough water.
Mm.
And then I start to up my intake the next week and it kind of fades.
That makes sense because it's also more linked to like the colon, isn't it? For up here.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you got to flush
Yeah,
it out.
like yeah, exactly.
Yep, makes sense. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved it. And as usual, if you do enjoy the episode, the podcast, I really appreciate a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. It really helps my podcast reach more people who need it and to spread my message. So I really appreciate your time for tuning in, and I can't wait to share what's coming next week.